Lauren laughed before she said it. That was the part one remembered most. Not the words themselves. Not at first. Just the sound of her laughing, head tilted back. Champagne glass lifted in one hand, the gold candlelight sliding across her cheek like she belonged to the room more than anyone else. We were at a private lodge on Table Rock Lake, the kind of place with polished wood floors, stone fireplaces, and staff who move quietly enough to make rich people feel important. Brent and Denise Holloway were hosting their 20th anniversary dinner, which meant 12 people around one long table, too much catered food, too much sparkling wine, and the usual game of married couple performing happiness for each other. I've never been much for performance. At 51, I owned half of Mercer Industrial Wash Systems, spent most of my days around warehouse contracts and delivery schedules, and preferred the smell of clean linen chemicals to expensive cologne. I was quiet, always had been. Lauren used to say that was what made me steady. For 24 years, I thought she meant it as a compliment. That night, she wore a dark green dress with a low back and little pearl earrings I bought her in Chicago 10 years ago. She had been in a bright mood from the moment we arrived, touching arms, telling stories louder than she needed to, leaning into every laugh just a little too long. People noticed her. Lauren liked being noticed. Dinner stretched on with the usual anniversary speeches and old jokes. Someone asked Brent how he and Denise kept things exciting after all these years. He made some harmless comment about still chasing his wife around the kitchen island. And the table laughed. Denise rolled her eyes. More laughter. Then someone, I think Monica, turned to Lauren and said, "What about you too?" Caleb's still romantic. Lauren looked at me with that loose, glittering smile people get when they've had enough champagne, to confuse cruelty with charm. "Oh, Caleb," she said, "please." The table chuckled softly, expecting something playful. She swirled her drink, glanced toward the bar, and said, "At this point, I'd probably rather kiss the bartender than kiss my own husband." The sentence landed clean, sharp, deliberate. A few people laughed because they didn't know what else to do. One laugh cut off halfway. Someone shifted a fork against the plate. Across from me, Denise's smile disappeared so fast it looked painful. Brent lowered his eyes to his wine. I didn't move. I remember the lake beyond the windows, black and still under the night. I remember the scent of rosemary from the lamb in front of me. I remember Lauren waiting for me to play my part. Maybe a wounded smile, maybe a joke back, maybe that familiar silence she had grown so comfortable using against me. Instead, I folded my napkin once and set it beside my plate. Then I turned my head slightly to the right and looked straight at Brent Holloway. And for the first time that evening, the room became completely quiet. I kept my eyes on Brent and said very evenly, "You should probably be careful laughing too hard at that." Lauren's smile twitched. Just once. Small enough that most people would have missed it. Brent didn't answer. He looked at me the way men do when they're trying to calculate how much another man knows before deciding whether to lie. I saved in the effort. "You've spent enough weekends with my wife already," I said. No reason to add tonight to the list. The air changed. Not slowly. All at once. Denise turned toward her husband, so sharply her chair legs scraped the floor. Lauren's fingers tightened around her glass. I could see the blood drain out of Brent's face under the warm amber lights. Outside, the lake stayed black and motionless, but inside that room everything had started to tilt. Lauren laughed again, but there was no ease in it now. "Caleb, what the hell are you talking about?" I looked at her then, really looked at her, at the polished smile, at the bare shoulders, at the woman who had just tried to make me small in front of a table full of people because she thought humiliation was safer than truth. Weekend cabin rentals under Brent's name, I said. 2 in Branson, 1 near Eureka Springs. Same dates you told me you were at women's retreats, or helping Sadie shop, or visiting your sister. Denise made a quiet sound, not quite a gasp, more like the sound a person makes when something inside them tears cleanly. Lauren set her glass down too fast. "You're insane." "No," I said, "just thorough." I turned back to Brent. "You got sloppy with the message deletions." Lauren was better at it, but not good enough. She forgot her tablet was still synced to the old cloud account. Deleted texts don't stay deleted when another device keeps refreshing. Brent stared at me in silence. I continued in the same tone I'd used all through dinner, the same tone I use in contract meetings and supplier disputes. And the second phone was a nice touch, kept in the glove box for a while, then in the blue weekender bag in the hall closet. Prepaid line, mostly calls on Fridays. Lauren pushed her chair back an inch. Stop. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I also know about the marina receipts, the bourbon Brent doesn't even drink but you do, and the cabin in October where you sign in as Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, because apparently both of you were too arrogant to imagine anyone would ever compare handwriting. Denise stood up, so abruptly her napkin slid to the floor. For a second, nobody spoke. The candles flickered between us. Silverware gleamed against white plates. Somewhere near the bar, a glass shattered. Lauren looked at me like she had never seen me before. That part, at least, was true. Denise started asking questions. Fast, sharp, the kind of questions that don't wait for answers. When? How long? Are you serious right now, Brent? Her voice cracked on his name. Lauren didn't look at her. She was still staring at me, like if she held eye contact long enough, she could force us back into something manageable, something she could control. Caleb, she said, quieter now, you're making a scene. I almost smiled. Behind her, Brent finally spoke. We should take this somewhere private. No. Denise snapped immediately. We are not taking anything anywhere. You can answer right here. The table had dissolved into fragments. Chairs shifting. People leaning back. Phones quietly flipped face down like that would somehow make them invisible witnesses. I stood up slowly. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just deliberate. I'm done here, I said. Lauren blinked. Done? You don't get to just drop something like that and walk out. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. I already dropped it. Brent stood halfway, like he wasn't sure whether to follow me or stay seated and defend himself. He chose neither. That told me everything I needed to know about him. Denise stepped toward him instead. I didn't watch what happened next. I walked past the table, past the bar where the bartender was pretending not to listen, past the wide glass doors that reflected all of them in fragments behind me. Ray's voices started to overlap. Lauren's voice cut through once, sharp, controlled, then cracking at the edges. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The night air was cold and clean. The lake stretched out in silence, untouched by whatever was unraveling behind me. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I crossed the parking lot. I didn't hurry. There was nothing to rush toward. My truck was parked under a dim light near the edge of the lot. I unlocked it, opened the door, and paused for just a second with my hand on the frame. 3 months. That's how long I had known. 3 months of watching patterns, of copying files, of sitting in the same house with Lauren while she rehearsed lies she thought were convincing. 3 months of preparing for this exact moment. I got in, closed the door, and started the engine. Inside the lodge, something loud shattered. Voices rose higher. Someone yelled a name. Maybe mine. Maybe his. It didn't matter. I pulled out of the lot without looking back. By the time Lauren would make it home, the house would still be clean. The lights would still turn on. The furniture would still be in place. Everything would look exactly the same. Except I wouldn't be there anymore. Lauren got home just after midnight. I know that because I'd already been watching the security feed from my phone when her car pulled into the driveway. Headlights swept across the garage door, then cut out. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then the driver's door opened. She stepped out slowly, like the ground might not be stable anymore. From the outside, the house looked exactly the way it always had. Porch light on, curtains drawn, no signs of disruption, no broken glass, no missing furniture. Just the same quiet suburban image we had built over 2 decades. That was intentional. Inside, it was already empty of me, not visibly, not at first glance, but in every way that actually mattered. I had cleared my office weeks ago. Files gone. Backup drives removed. Paperwork transferred. The closet in the hallway, where she used to keep that blue weekender bag, now held nothing but spare blankets. My clothes were reduced to a few neutral pieces left behind on purpose. Enough to delay realization, not enough to matter. She walked in and turned on the kitchen light. Paused. You can always tell the moment someone feels it. That subtle shift when familiarity stops feeling safe. When something is technically the same, but fundamentally wrong. She said my name once. Caleb. No answer. She moved through the house faster after that. Living room, office, bedroom, closet. That's where it hit her. Because that's where the gaps couldn't be ignored anymore. I watched her stand there, staring at the empty sections of closet rod, her shoulders stiff, her breathing shallow. Not panic yet, not fully, just the beginning of it. Then she noticed the folder. I had left it on the dresser, centered, clean, deliberate. She picked it up with both hands, sat on the edge of the bed, opened it. Inside was everything I was willing to let her see. Printed message logs, dates, locations, photos, nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, just enough to remove any space for denial. At the very top, a single sheet, no discussion necessary. Underneath that, a copy of the preliminary divorce filing, a notice of asset separation, confirmation of independent legal representation. Her hand started to shake then, not violently, just enough to make the paper shift. She reached for her phone. I watched the screen light up as she called me. It rang once on my end. Then I silenced it. She called again. And again. By the fourth attempt, her posture changed. The control she relied on, the ability to talk, to explain, to reshape reality in real time, was gone because there was no conversation coming. Only consequences. Across town, in a small townhouse leased under an LLC that didn't carry my name directly, I sat at a clean table with a single lamp on and my phone face down beside me. Everything I needed was already here. Clothes, documents, accounts separated, bills automated, life intact, just without her in it. Her name flashed across the screen again. I didn't touch it. She didn't stop calling that night. 23 missed calls before 2 a.m., 9 voicemails. I listened to none of them. The first message came less than a minute after the fourth call. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was still trying to hold on to the version of herself that could manage any situation. Caleb, pick up. This isn't funny. The next one lost that edge. Okay, I get it. You're upset. We need to talk. By the sixth, there was frustration. Don't do this. You don't just disappear like this. And by the ninth, the control was gone. Caleb, please, just call me back. I deleted them all without opening a single file. Morning came quietly. At 7:30, I was already sitting across from my attorney, a man named Richard Hale, in a glass-walled office that overlooked a parking structure and nothing else. Neutral ground. No distractions. Just paperwork and outcomes. He slid a folder toward me. We're filing today. I nodded once. Inside the folder was everything structured the way I wanted it. Not emotional. Not reactive. Precise. Grounds included infidelity, yes. But more importantly, a documented pattern of deception, financial irregularities, misrepresentation of time and location, coordinated concealment, not a mistake, a system. She'll try to talk, Richard said, maybe apologize, maybe blame you, maybe both. She won't get the chance. I answered. He studied me for a second, then gave a small nod. Understood. We signed. By noon, the filing was active. By 12:17, Lauren called again. I watched her name appear on the screen while I sat in my car outside the office. This time, I let it ring longer. Not because I was considering answering, because I wanted her to feel the distance, to understand that the space between us wasn't temporary. It was permanent. She followed with texts. We can fix this. This is insane. You're overreacting. Call me now. Please. The shift happened exactly where I expected it. From authority to negotiation to demand to desperation. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded everything, call logs, messages, timestamps, directly to Richard's office. Documentation mattered. Silence mattered more. By evening, she escalated. She showed up at the office. Reception called me while I was reviewing inventory contracts. There's a woman here asking for you. She says it's urgent. I already knew. Tell her I'm unavailable, I said. There was a pause. She doesn't want to leave. That won't change anything. 10 minutes later, security escorted her out. I didn't go to the window. I didn't need to see her to know what she looked like in that moment. Disbelief first, then anger, then that slow, creeping panic when reality stops bending the way it used to. For 24 years, Lauren controlled a narrative. She could talk her way out of anything, reframe anything, turn doubt into sympathy, mistakes into misunderstandings. But that only works when there's someone on the other side willing to listen. I had removed that completely. No arguments, no explanations, no reactions, just action. That was the part she wasn't prepared for. Because for the first time in our entire marriage, I wasn't participating anymore. 3 days after the filing, Richard called me earlier than scheduled. Something came up, he said. You need to see this. I was already in the office when I arrived. He didn't waste time with small talk. Just turned his monitor toward me and tapped the screen once. Bank transfers. At first glance, they looked ordinary. Mid-sized movements between accounts. Nothing that would raise alarms on their own. But the pattern was wrong. Consistent withdrawals. Irregular destinations. Total it, he said. I didn't reach for a calculator. I just scanned the column. 92,000. Gone. I leaned back slightly. Not surprised. Just confirming. She didn't spend this on shopping or trips, Richard continued. It's too structured, too deliberate. Where did it go? I asked. He clicked into another window. A company name appeared. Clean, professional, generic enough to avoid attention. A boutique investment group tied to a hospitality venture. On paper, it was a wine bar project based in Arkansas. Expansion opportunity. Private investors. Limited access. I looked at the name again. Then I nodded once. Brent. Richard watched my reaction. You already knew. I suspected, I said. This confirms it. He pulled up another document. Incorporation records. The company traced back through 2 shell layers before landing exactly where I expected. Brent Holloway, sole controller. No partners. No actual business activity. Just intake and disappearance. I let the silence sit for a few seconds. Not anger. Not even disappointment. Just clarity adjusting itself to a deeper level. She wasn't manipulated. I said finally. Richard didn't answer immediately. Then, not based on this. The transfers were authorized. Repeatedly. Meaning she knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. I stood up and walked to the window. Same view as before. Same parking structure. Same stillness. Behind me, Richard spoke again. I already brought in a forensic accountant. Quietly, he's been tracing the paths. It gets worse. Explain. The money doesn't just sit. It moves through 3 accounts, then splits. Some of it cycles back into Brent's personal holdings. Some disappears offshore. I nodded slowly. And Lauren, I asked, she's listed as an early-stage private contributor, he said. Signed documentation. Not forged. That mattered. Not because of the money, because of what it meant legally. And strategically, I turned back toward him. So she didn't just have an affair. No, he said. She participated. There it was. Not a victim. Not someone misled. Someone involved. Someone who chose. I picked up the printed report from the desk, flipped through the pages once. Dates. Signatures. Transfers. Structure. Then I set it back down neatly. Add it to the case, I said. Richard gave a short nod. It strengthens everything. I know. My phone buzzed on the desk. Lauren, again. I didn't look at it this time. I didn't need to, because whatever version of the story she was still trying to tell was already collapsing under facts she couldn't talk her way out of. Tyler called me 2 days later. Not a message. Not a text. A call. That alone told me something had shifted. I let it ring once before answering. Hey, he said. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Not confusion. Not yet. Something closer to tension waiting to break. Hey, I replied. A pause. Then, Mom told me you're filing for divorce. She told you that? I asked. Yeah. She said you found something and you're blowing out of proportion. Another pause. She said you won't talk to her. I leaned back in my chair. That part's true. Silence stretched between us. Tyler had always been closer to Lauren. Everyone knew it. She was the warm one, the expressive one, the one who showed up to games, remembered birthdays, stayed emotionally present in ways I never tried to compete with. I provided stability. She provided connection. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. Dad, he said, quieter now. What's actually going on? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I opened a drawer beside me and took out a small black drive. No label, no markings, just data. Everything organized, everything time-stamped, everything real. I'm sending you something. I said, what is it? Information. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He exhaled slowly. This feels serious. It is. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom said you've been distant for months, he added. That you've been hiding things. Money stuff. There it was. I closed my eyes for a second. Not out of frustration. Out of recognition. She said that? I asked. Yeah. She said you've been moving assets around. That something didn't feel right. I nodded to myself. So it started earlier than I thought. Check your email in 10 minutes. I said, what's in it? The truth. He didn't respond right away. Then carefully, and what if I don't want to see it? I leaned forward slightly. Then don't open it. Silence. But if you do, I continued, understand something first. What? Once you see it, you don't get to go back to not knowing. His breathing shifted. Slower now. He understood. I'll look, he said. Okay. I ended the call without anything else. No reassurance. No explanation. Just a file. Inside it was everything I chose to include. Hotel timestamps. Security footage stills. Audio fragments. Financial records. Her messages. Not all of them, just enough. And at the very end, a separate folder. Plans. Conversations Lauren had with Brent about leaving. About timing. About how long they could disappear without raising suspicion. Not theory. Not emotion. Intent. An hour passed. Then my phone rang again. Tyler. I answered. He didn't say hello. How long? He asked. Long enough. His voice was different now. Stripped down. Raw in a way I had never heard from him before. She told me you were hiding money, he said. That you were preparing something behind her back. I said, a sharp inhale. That's not the point, and you know it. No, I said calmly. It isn't. Silence again. Then quieter, she tried to get me on her side months ago. That made me still. She said you were becoming secretive, he continued. That I should keep an eye on things. Just in case. I didn't interrupt. I thought she was just worried, he said. I thought. He stopped, then finished. I thought you were the one pulling away. I looked down at the desk in front of me. That was the real play, not the affair, the positioning, the narrative, built in advance. I needed you to see it yourself, I said. Another long pause. Then finally, I'm not going back there, Tyler said. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. I'm coming by later, he added. If that's okay. It is. He hung up. I set the phone down slowly. Across the room, everything was still exactly where it belonged. For the first time since it started, there was no uncertainty left. It didn't take long. It never does when the truth stops being contained. At first, it moved quietly. Conversations behind closed doors. Phone calls that ended too quickly. Messages that weren't returned. Invitations that suddenly got lost. But then it spread, because people talk. Especially people who had been sitting at that table. Denise filed within the week. No hesitation. No delay. And she didn't keep it private. She told her attorney everything. Then she told 2 friends. Then those friends told others. By the end of the second week, Brent's name wasn't just attached to an affair. It was attached to fraud, to manipulation, to something much bigger than a marriage falling apart. Their country club didn't remove him officially. They didn't have to. People just stopped acknowledging him. That's how those places work. Reputation doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes. Quietly, publicly, permanently. Lauren tried to hold her position. For a few days, she still went to work at the medical staffing firm, still dressed the same, still walked in like nothing had changed. But people knew. Not everything. Not yet. Just enough. Conversation stopped when she entered rooms. Meetings got shorter. One of her supervisors started documenting things. Small things at first. Timing, decisions, communication gaps. Then the documents appeared. Anonymous, clean, precise. The kind that don't accuse. They just present. Financial links. Transfer patterns. Her name tied to Brent's investment structure. Signatures. Dates. No emotion. Just facts. That's what made it impossible to ignore. By the end of the month, she was placed on leave, pending review, neutral language, final meaning. The nonprofit was worse. She had spent years building that image. Board meetings, fundraisers, community speeches. The version of Lauren that people trusted, that version disappeared fast. Not because anyone publicly attacked her, because they stepped away. Quietly, one board member resigned first, then another. Then Lauren was asked to take a step back for the good of the organization, which meant she was done. Completely. Tyler told me most of it, not in detail. Just enough. She's not handling it well, he said one evening. We were sitting outside my townhouse. Late. No noise except distant traffic. I nodded once. I didn't expect her to. He looked at me carefully. She keeps saying you set her up. That almost made me pause. Did I? I asked. He shook his head slowly. No. Then after a second. But she believes it. I leaned back in the chair. That's the only version of this where she doesn't have to take responsibility, I said. Tyler didn't argue. Across town, everything Lauren had built was collapsing piece by piece. Not because I destroyed it, because it couldn't survive exposure. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't controlling how the story was told. The invitations went out quietly. Heavy cream paper. Simple black lettering. No unnecessary design. Just a name at the top. Mercer Foundation Scholarship Gala. My mother's name sat underneath it. I didn't announce anything publicly. I didn't explain it. I just funded it, organized it, and let the right people receive the invitation. They came. Of course they did. The same people who had sat at that table weeks earlier. The same ones who had heard everything fall apart in real time. Business owners, board members, local officials, people who understood reputation, even if they pretended not to care about it. This time, there was no tension in the room, just quiet attention. Sadie stood next to me near the entrance as guests arrived. Black dress, hair pulled back, composed. She had known before anyone else, seen something at that jazz festival months ago, and chosen not to ignore it. That mattered. You ready? She asked. I already am, I said. Tyler arrived 10 minutes later. He hesitated for a second before stepping fully into the room, like he was crossing an invisible line. Then he walked over, shook my hand once, then pulled me into a brief, firm hug. No words, none needed. We stood together after that. Not for show, just aligned. The event moved exactly the way I planned it. Short speeches, clear purpose, no theatrics. When it was my turn, I didn't mention Lauren. I didn't mention the divorce. I didn't mention anything that had happened over the last few months. I spoke about my mother, about work, about building something that lasts. Then I stepped down. That was enough. People came up afterward, not with questions, with respect. You can tell the difference. It's in how they stand, how they speak, how they don't try to fill silence with unnecessary words. Across the room, I caught fragments of conversation. My name, the business, the way everything had been handled. No sympathy, no pity, just acknowledgement. That's what replaced everything Lauren thought she had built. Not attention, not performance. Stability, control, outcome. Later that night, after most of the guests had left, I stepped outside for some air. The city was quiet, lights stretching out in clean lines. Behind me, I heard the door open. Tyler. She was watching, he said. I didn't turn around. From where? Doesn't matter, he replied. She knows. Of course she did. He stepped beside me. I think she expected you to fall apart. I nodded once. That would have made it easier. For her, he said. Yes. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then he added, You didn't? No, I said. I didn't. Inside, the last of the staff were clearing tables, glassware, linens, quiet, efficient movements. Everything closing down exactly the way it should. Controlled. Complete. Behind us, whatever version of life Lauren had tried to build was gone. In front of me, there was something else. Not louder, not bigger, just better. And this time, no one else had any control over it. The divorce finalized without noise. No dramatic hearings. No last-minute negotiations. Just paperwork moving through the system exactly the way it was designed to. Structured, predictable, final. Lauren contested parts of it at first. Not everything. Just enough to try and regain ground. Asset division, timing, language. But the case wasn't built on emotion. It was built on documentation, on patterns, on decisions she had made and signed. That doesn't leave much room to argue. In the end, it closed mostly on my terms. Clean lines, clear separation, no ongoing entanglement. That was the only outcome I ever wanted. Time moved the way it always does after something ends. Not fast, not slow, just forward. Sadie got married the following spring. Small ceremony, private venue, nothing excessive. Lauren wasn't invited. That decision wasn't discussed. It didn't need to be. I walked Sadie down the aisle myself. Steady pace. No hesitation. At the reception, Tyler stood next to me during the speeches. Same quiet presence he had learned to carry over the past year. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. It had already been settled. Months later, Tyler called me with different news. A house. Then a child. His voice sounded different again. Lighter this time. Untangled. I visited them a week after the baby was born. Held my grandson in a quiet living room with sunlight coming through half-drawn blinds. No tension. No performance. Just life continuing the way it's supposed to. That's when I understood something clearly. None of this had been about winning. It had been about removing what was false and keeping what was real. I met Rachel at a hospital fundraiser. Not planned. Not pursued. She was there because of her late husband. I was there because of the foundation. We spoke once, briefly, then again a few weeks later. There was no rush to it, no pressure, no need to define anything quickly. Just two people who understood loss in different ways and didn't try to rewrite it. That was enough. Years passed, not dramatically, just steadily. Lauren faded into distance. Occasional updates reached me through indirect paths. Different city, different job, smaller life, quieter. I never followed up, never checked, never asked. Whether she regretted it stopped mattering a long time ago. One evening, I was sitting on the back patio of my house, watching the sun drop behind the trees. Rachel was inside, setting plates for dinner. Tyler had called earlier. Sadie had sent photos. Everything was stable, complete. For a moment, I thought about that night at the lake. The laughter, the insult, the version of me she expected to break under it. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just distance. Because the truth was simple. The life she tried to tear apart didn't end. It changed, refined, stronger where it needed to be, quieter where it mattered. And in the end, the only thing I actually lost was the illusion